Do you want to feel happier? Do you want to feel more radiant and more alive? To go beyond alive and to feel truly like you are thriving? That's what I'm here for. Helping you find that best you that you know is in there. It is. And you can start accessing that you today. It's possible. If you're ready for a shortcut to just that, let's work together. Reach out and let's work one-on-one to transform you and your life into happy, into thriving. Reach out to me and book a quick call. It's in the show notes, and let's get you there. Are you really committed and ready? Let's do it. I'm the happiest I've ever been thanks to all the practices I've made a part of my life. You can be too. It's here for you. You can also access my course, The Youthfulness Hack, which is all about feeling good and getting radiant and all the things I do concentrated in one spot. Go there today and use code AMY15 for 15% off right now, only for listeners of this show. And if you are ready to truly have accountability and live happy, book a call with me today. The world needs your best. Commit and show up. Let's do this. Hello, and welcome to the Amy Edwards Show. I'm your host, Amy Edwards, and of course we have another epic show for you today. I am so excited about this one. I know I say it every week because I get so excited, but of course it's no exception this week. Thank you so much for being here. We are here to transform our lives in the most efficient and effective way possible, finding different ways that can get us to that next best self of which there is no limit. So that is my whole purpose in life, to use my voice to help you strengthen yours and become your best self. So I am so excited about what we're going to talk about today, because for me, it's been instrumental in helping me continue to get to my next best self. Our guest today, I am welcoming Sonia Kahlon, and Sonia is the founder of EverBlume. She's going to tell us all about the niche that EverBlume fills in the sobriety world and how she created it. And Sonia, welcome today. Full transparency too, I don't even know how I got on the EverBlume mailing list, right? Initially, I'm not sure. And I got one and I read it and I was like, who is this? I love her already. I love what's going on. And I wrote you back immediately and I was like, I don't know if you're interested in a sponsorship for the show. And you said, yes. We just went in cold. And I was like, I'd love to have you on the show. And so this was all, just my heart. I believe so much in what you're doing. And the fact that it is a women-led business, I love that so much. It's part of my heart. And so I'm just so excited to really connect with you today and hear more about your story, and in hopes that not only will it help my sobriety journey, but someone else that's listening. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I think we both probably delete emails like that very, very easily on a right. So there must have been something in the water that day.
Yeah, I know. I just read it and I think I had just been that day too, just in some mindset of like surrender and openness. And I was just in the mood to really see what was coming my way, and sometimes that's the way things flow, right? And so anyway, I'm grateful that it happened and to be connected with you. I listened to a different podcast that you were on, and I just really enjoyed your story. Enjoyed maybe isn't the right word, but was moved by and inspired by. And I am so excited for you to tell that. And I would love to hear in your words, what EverBlume truly is and what you're seeing blossom out of it.
Yeah. So basically, the idea started where I was only finding really large meetings online, and any smaller meetings, they really discouraged crosstalk, right? So feedback, conversation was not something that was encouraged. And so I was going through a really tough time and I needed that feedback, and I needed it from like my recovery family. So I looked for something and I couldn't find it. So I created it. And so it's EverBloom. And so what we do is we provide small group meetings, and it really helps mostly women explore their relationship with alcohol. So we're not 100% abstinence, sobriety. I'm 100% abstinent and sober, but we really want people to figure out what they're doing for themselves and have a choice. And so we match people based on what they're going through. And so we come up with meetings that are about 12 to 15 people, and they're beautiful. Like the conversation and what you can do in a small group in terms of like someone bringing up a topic and then you can talk about it for 10 minutes. And the conversation back and forth, you know that people are getting what they need when they're having that type of conversation. And so that's what we do.
Yeah, I was really grateful to sit in on a meeting, and it was so interesting too because it kind of took some turns, and you honed in on certain things that were themes going on, and it was really fun to have the crosstalk because I've attended plenty of AA meetings or Al-Anon, and that's, those are spaces where you just talk, and that serves a purpose. It really does. But I love that you wanted more and you went and created it yourself. Why'd you name it Everbloom, by the way?
I think it's just like I had like columns of words and it just was like, oh, that's it. Like, so something that's like evergreen and then something that's blooming. And so I feel like that's sort of been, that is the journey for me of sobriety, where it's like feels, mostly feels like it's going to be there for a long time and then it changes year to year.
How does it change for you? How does that look for you?
It looked I would say from like years 2 to 5 looked pretty similar, like amazing. I was doing great. I had sold my business and I was finally kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. I was an orthodontist before. And when you're Indian, I'm Indian, the choice of careers is very limited. So it's like doctor,
So
dentist,
I've heard,
pharmacist.
yeah, yeah.
And so I just like picked the one in the middle, the one that was like medium. And so I went with that, but it wasn't anything I was ever passionate about, like in my heart. Like I liked being an orthodontist. It was fun going to work, but it wasn't like I didn't feel like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so those years after I sold my business and got sober were amazing. I was taking any kind of class I wanted, like jewelry making, photography, writing classes, like anything. I was volunteering and I was really good. And I was just kind of like going along, like everything was going to stay that way. And then out of nowhere, and yes, it does happen, my husband got up one morning and left. And all of a sudden, everything I thought I knew about my sobriety was not correct. Like it felt like
Like what? Like what? What is that?
I I remember I like went for a walk. I barely sleep after he left. And I went for a walk with my dogs on the Hudson. I was in New York and I thought, what is the point of being sober? Like, what's the point? So I got sober. I'm becoming the best version of myself. And my husband left, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What a
And
slap in the face, right?
it
You're
was such
just,
a slap in the face. Yeah. It
wow.
was so hard to reconcile the fact that the person I am now versus, we were together for 18 years, the person I was at like 24 is a very different person, but it was pretty clear this person was better than that person, but not to him. And I think I just thought like what so he had kind of said, oh, you're a lot more introverted now, you're a lot more focused on your family, you don't seem to like need to go out as much. And it's like, yeah, I'm sober,
Yeah.
I don't like need to go out as
Was
much. I
he
didn't
sober? Was he
It
sober?
was interesting, and this is sort of over time what I figured out is that he never appeared to really have a problem with substances. And so he smoked a lot of weed, but he said it was, situational. It was like we're stressed at work and he needed to smoke weed when he got home. And so I think where this took a turn was that he stopped smoking weed and for the most part, stopped drinking, but he didn't do any of the work.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm making a new life. I don't want to be that person who was obsessed with money and growing a business and scaling, and he still was that person, very much still like immersed in that startup world, like white male dominated Patagonia vest like world. And he stayed there for a really long
I
time.
love
And
I
so
love that you threw in the vest just to paint the picture. So yeah. It works. I get it.
and they
Yeah.
ski Aspen. They don't ski in Aspen, they ski Aspen in the winter. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole lifestyle. And it's funny how people can grow apart, especially from our 20s, right? It's like such a totally like I know I couldn't relate to myself at 24 or 25, like completely different. And we don't know ourselves, you know?
Right. I mean, I think the way I looked at it, and it's not about like vows or like, I mean, it is, but it was that I thought we loved each other a lot and that we would just figure it out. And I didn't think that there was anything that couldn't be fixed in general.
Yeah.
I'm probably because I had fixed my drinking essentially. I'd already done the hardest thing I thought I was ever going to have to do. And so it was a big shock that he didn't want to work on the marriage at all. I never saw him or heard from him again after he left that day, really.
What?
There were some
Wow.
texts, there were like a couple of really brief phone calls, but yeah. And then it was interesting because, and so this kind of should make me feel better, but he was obviously seeing someone else. And the person that he
Oh,
was seeing was someone who drank a lot, went out every night, big, like social, I would say more like has a million acquaintances. And so that is what he wanted. I'm happy that that became clear to me.
for sure, right? For sure, because that was just not your path. How many years of sobriety do you have under your belt at this point?
6,
6.
yeah, in a
What
few days.
oh, tell me the story of getting sober yourself.
Yeah, so I grew up around a lot of drinking. Indian people drink a lot, but women don't drink. So I saw a lot growing up, a lot of low functioning alcoholics, like a lot of
Yeah.
DUIs and fights. And so I think I was like, well, if I'm not like that, then I'm doing okay. And so I started drinking when I was 15. I had massive anxiety. I was this
Where'd you grow up?
in
Where'd you grow up?
Toronto, Toronto,
Toronto. Okay.
Canada.
So massive anxiety as a teenager, that's a recipe for drinking many times.
Yeah. And also being, one of the only non-white kids in a really white school and being tiny, in the class pictures, I was always like the one who had to like kneel in the front because I was so small. And, that combined with like no athletic ability, it was a recipe for disaster. So yeah, when I found drinking, I was like, this is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. And it really let me fit in so many different places. And then I continued to binge drink through college, and my personality was fluid. I could go between groups now. I could make friends with all sorts of people, and I was like, and it's because of that drinking. Thank God. And so
Hmm.
I just kept binge drinking for a really long time. And so I was in school for a long time and I binge drank. It would moderate the frequency because if I had exams, I wouldn't drink for a couple of weeks and then I would binge drink. And I had consequences. I just didn't care. I thought, well, I'm high functioning. I'm making it to class. I'm getting good grades. I don't have any visible scars. So we're doing pretty good. And so yeah, and I didn't start drinking daily until I started a business and working every day and working a lot, working like 14, 16 hours a day. And I had never developed any coping mechanisms for stress. And this was
I
it.
think
And
I think that's
so,
such a common thing too. Like so many people don't like we literally don't have a coping mechanism for stress. Like when I wasn't drinking, I started eating. And I was like, oh. And finally I got an awareness enough to go like, oh, I'm eating to cope. And like, no, having those healthy mechanisms for coping is foreign to us in so many ways. I think, you know?
it is. I mean, because if I look at now what my mechanisms are, I mean, it's pretty elaborate, right? Like my
Yeah.
evening ritual is elaborate. Like there's an LED mask, there's like candles. But yeah, so I was drinking and
Same, same,
yeah,
same.
it's a
Yes.
lot. Like people will text me at like 8:30 and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can't swear, but sober stuff." I'm like, "I'm just doing sober
You can
stuff for
swear.
the next
Okay.
I'm just doing sober shit for the next 2 hours, okay? Like if that's what you want to know, that's what I'm doing. I'm journaling, I'm loving myself, I'm lighting candles, I'm like doing all the things. And it
You
takes hours.
It really does. You're talking my language too. I mean, that's like it. I didn't know we were going to call it sober shit, but I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I'm totally here for it. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's amazing. And so, yeah, so I didn't have those skills. And I think on top of that, like we're in this culture, especially in like the 2010s, where like the work hard, play hard thing was
yeah.
a big deal, right? Like you can sleep on the floor of your office and then you can be like on a yacht in Greece the next day. And I think that I was sort of really getting kind of sucked into that culture of just working really hard, being super successful, and then just being a total disaster when I wasn't working. And I am like really the luckiest person on earth because I was drowning in work and I called a headhunter and I said, I need some help. Like I need some more help at work. Do you have any executive level help? Do you have any more people I can hire? And he said, well, have you ever considered selling your business? And I thought, no. Is this something you sell? And by then we had about 7 offices and it was big business, but I think I didn't understand it. Partially, I think I have some imposter syndrome and
Sure.
partially I think, yeah, I just had blinders on. And so I didn't really realize it. And then he set us up with somebody and we got an offer that was like bananas. And like there was no way that I would have let us turn it down. And so we took it. And then I just remember thinking there was like a period between when you like accept it and when it closes. And it was like 6, 8 months. And I remember thinking, what am I going to do without all that like stuff on my plate, without that identity too of being like hardcore, like
Yeah.
boss? Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I knew I would start drinking more. And I knew I might start doing drugs because I didn't have a professional license that meant much after, like it wouldn't, I didn't need to uphold the license. And so for months and months, I was talking to myself saying like, this is going to be a problem. There's going to be a problem. Like if you're
Mhm.
home at 3 o'clock, are you going to open a bottle of wine? And so I just thought, let me try. It's like Super Bowl 2017. I said, let me try not drinking for Super Bowl. I had not gone a day for a decade at that point. Like,
Wow.
like nothing.
Wow.
No, like not the flu, not a blizzard, like nothing stopped that train. Like I had not gone a single day. No hangover bad enough. And so I just remember Super Bowl being like, oh, if you can do this, go big or go home. And I stayed sober for Super Bowl Sunday. It and I think maybe our team won. Was in Philadelphia at the time. I think they might have won.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so I did that one day and then kind of like went back to daily drinking for a couple more months and then just woke up one day close to around the sale and said, I guess I have to stop. And I just stopped. And
And you just stopped.
it was
Wow.
miserable. It was white knuckling it. It was jittery, horrible feeling. And yeah, I think what the actual day was, I went out with a friend of mine for brunch and she was pregnant. So she wasn't drinking. And I was so hungover, like vicious. Like, you see like the black spots, like every time you stand up, and I was
Oh yeah,
sweating
gosh.
and I remember the waiter was like, "Do you want a mimosa?" And I was like, "No." Mm-mm. And I don't think I'd ever said no to a drink. And I just didn't drink after that day.
Wow. Are you ready to up-level your pleasure practice? I have in mind, and the main things that have helped me are the tools that I've found from Wands. Wands creates luxurious products that encourage us all to honor our body, celebrate our sexuality, and live in pleasure, with more pleasure all the time. One of my favorites, if you listen to this show, then you probably already know, is the Cervix Wand. Wands has trademarked their #1 best-selling glass pleasure wand. It's for vaginal and anal de-armoring, and it's designed for cervical and G-spot stimulation. And let me tell you, it's incredible. It's helped thousands of women become more connected to their bodies and their pleasure, and supports them to heal pelvic pain through self-yoni massage, and helps awaken more pleasure. Just recently, I've ordered the Venus wand, another trademarked wand from Wands, and it's designed to activate and awaken the G-spot and more. Also, don't miss one of their new offerings, which are free bleed blankets that can be used as waterproof intimacy blankets. They have a beautiful selection now available. But take a look around at wands.com, that's WAANDS, because they have a huge selection of incredible items like yoni eggs, crystal pleasure wands in amethyst, black obsidian, anything that your heart desires, and so much more. Check them out at wands.com, that's WAANDS.com, and use my link in the show notes to get 10% off, or simply enter my code Amy Edwards at checkout. Again, that's WAANDS, wands.com. Y'all, I have started using higher dose products, and I am such a fan. You know, I don't put anything on this podcast that I am not 100% completely behind. And I have a special discount code for you for all higher dose products. I'm so excited. If you don't know, Higher Dose is a wellness company. They have wellness tech products, they have tools, they have supplements, and they have body care. They have so many things that are hot right now too, that are really biohacking and up-leveling our lives at home, which is really cool. They have an infrared sauna blanket. They have an infrared PEMF mat that I'm so excited to be sharing about soon. One of my favorites though is the red light face mask. It stimulates collagen, it activates glowing skin, reduces fine lines, regenerates cells, and it's soft. It's not like one of the hard plastic ones, so you can kind of move it around on your body, which I've been doing, and I am seeing amazing results. I am absolutely addicted to it. I use it every single night, and I'm using it in conjunction with one of their other products, the Glow Serum. And I'm very picky about what I put on my skin, and I am loving the Glow Serum. It's specially formulated to plump and hydrate and stimulate radiant skin, which that's the goal. They have a ton of other products too, magnesium ingestibles, magnesium body care, which has a healing oil and a serotonin soap that you can use in your bath, which I've been using too. It boosts your mood, enhances your skin, and deepens your detox, gets you calmed down. Anyway, I'm a fan, so I'm so excited to offer you 15% off using my code MAGIC15. Go to the show notes. You can click through on the link right there, or if you go to Higher Dose, just enter the code MAGIC15 and you'll get 15% off. Higher Dose has been featured in Goop, Glamour, Elle, Vogue, Bazaar, Allure, basically you name it. And there's a reason why. So go check it out. It's at higherdose.com and enter my code MAGIC15 for 15% off. And where did you find support? If you say you were white knuckling it and stuff, like, how did you maintain?
So I think I just, one, my brother had been in AA at that point for a really long time. And so he was a great support. Unfortunately, he ended up relapsing a couple of years after at like his 10th year. But my pathway was just like, do all the things. Do them all the things you ever wanted to do, just do them, and like fill your life with not distractions, but fill your life with like meaningful things. For once you have that energy and the time. And so that's what I did. I like tried to take the things I've learned and, teach them. And so I went on to teach entrepreneurship to incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. I helped victims of sex trafficking with their resumes. And that's, it's what I knew because I knew how to run a business. So I was like, yeah, I interview people all the time. Let me help you with your resume. And so I was just really happy. Yeah, I went to school for photography. I got a certificate. And then I started making images behind me, but like about my addiction and like mental health struggles. And then I started writing about it. And I was really happy, but I think, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but like someone's silence is sometimes a sign that they're not happy. So my ex-husband never was like, good job, or what are you doing now? Or, even wanted to put like my art up on our walls. And so
just not engaged. It's like not engaged in your life, right? There's not like an interest.
Yeah. And I was trying every interest he had. I would, try, like Peloton. I hate the Peloton. I tried that thing. Did
you get a Patagonia vest?
No, I didn't.
Did you get
I
Just
should
checking.
have. No, but I have an
You
LL
even
Bean
you
like
hit the
hoodie.
Peloton.
The
Oh, okay, that
Peloton, yeah.
counts for sure.
I got into crypto. I turned some of my art into NFTs. He was into
Oh, yeah.
crypto. So I tried, but he just wasn't interested. And I think there was a part, and I knew that he was embarrassed, right? He was a like tough love guy. Like there's no mental illness, there's no addiction. Just stop doing what you're doing. And
Mm,
so I think that, started to become more clear as kind of the years went on that, I would give him some of my essays to read, like about my sobriety, and he would fix the grammar. Like,
wow.
there was like never
Yeah.
any feedback, like, oh, this is really good, or yeah. And so that was sort of, yeah. So that was up until then, that was my pathway. And I had sober friends in New York. I would, go to meetings here and there, mostly to meet people. So I would go to some AA meetings in New York and I'd meet some people and then we'd hang out. And then, yeah, I'd go to some online meetings and that was sort of it. A lot of quit lit, listened to a lot of quit lit.
Isn't it funny how we do things to become our best selves and people outside of us just can't handle it sometimes? I have a friend once who she wasn't super overweight, but she was enough, and she made a drastic change and she lost weight and she started looking really hot. And her husband could not handle it. And they ended up getting a divorce. And he wasn't overweight. And I just remember thinking, wow, like it's so weird how people get an image of us in their head and that's the way we need to stay. And that's the thing that about sobriety that can be really challenging, I think.
Yeah, I think it's also something that we don't anticipate happening. I think
Yeah.
that, yeah, we sort of assume that why would somebody leave as we're improving ourselves? Or like, why would a
Yeah.
relationship get worse? Like, why would that, how is that even possible? But, and it was so hard to reconcile that. It took a lot of journaling, a lot of therapy to figure out like, it's okay, that this sort of,
Yeah.
yeah, it's okay that this happened. You wouldn't have been happy long term. And so, yeah, I know it was tough, but it's, yeah.
Yeah.
And when your
Yeah. How
values
how do you
start to diverge.
absolutely. And how do you does it still come up for you? Do you still have to do work around it, or do you feel like you've really reached a peaceful place with that?
I feel like people want to hear that I've reached a peaceful place with it, but no, it's still really hard. I have like, instead of bad days, I have like a bad hour. And I have
Oh,
mostly good
nice.
days. Yeah. So it's definitely, and I think I'm strong enough now, which I wasn't before, to like create my own narrative and say, no, like stop the thought and be like, no, that was not okay. And like how he acted was not okay. And if someone doesn't support this, it's not okay. Like, and so yeah, I'm able to deal with it a lot better now. And I have family too I have two sister-in-laws that were both married to my brother and divorced from my brother.
Oh.
And he's an alcoholic. And so,
Mhm.
but they are hilarious. Like they are just like, why are you thinking about him? Why are you even thinking about him? Who cares? Who cares? Like, and it's like, it's super helpful for that. That feedback is very helpful.
I bet. I bet. And I love that you pointed out it's that time that you bounce back. We don't have a bad day necessarily or week or whatever it is. You really have a bad hour. And I feel the same way. Like it's like the time that I'm feeling bad is still there's still some, but it's just shortened. And I'm able to get back to the sober shit, and remember this is the
Yes.
stuff that helps me.
Yes, that is really what it is. Like it's that it's and it's a lot about it's a lot similar to getting sober, right? Where the
Hmm.
first few weeks are just horrific. And like you can only, for me, and I could only think about alcohol and how I wasn't having it. And yeah, I actually, yeah, I thought that a few times. This is really similar to getting sober. And there was a physical pain associated with that like loss for me. And so yeah, it was, yeah, bad hours. I can even go with like bad 20 minutes now. and kind of get
Yeah, me
myself
too.
out of it. Yeah.
Me too. Uh-huh. And then I come back to my practices and as far as sobriety goes, I think this will come out right when I hit a year. And I felt like I know it's exciting. I'm still kind of astonished that I've done it. And one of the things I really liked about your meetings too was there was a lot of grace around it, a lot of like everyone was talking not in complete absolute terms. So if people were searching for a way to connect and have just some like, oh, wait, I did have a drink, there's not like shame around that. It was very understanding and compassionate. And so anyway, I am sober like from everything for a year. But I don't know what the future holds. Like, I don't know, will I have another drink? Am I an alcoholic? Probably. Yeah. I have had plenty of, you know, blackouts and all that kind of stuff and a lot of drinking, but I have 2 kids and I think that has helped keep me sober a lot because during the pandemic, they didn't want to see me drinking. They thought that that meant I had to use that to even be with them. So I just didn't do it. And I mean, I was still drinking some, but not around them. And so, you know, that was just part of my journey. Like I started to gather an awareness around it. And I started doing like the sober shit, like self-love and stuff in that period too. So I think those two just really went together. And it was like, for me, I just became just in this headspace of why am I avoiding this? Why am I avoiding getting sober? It it turned out to be the uncomfortable space that was going to be growth rather than, the next uh, psychedelic journey or having drinks with friends, whatever those were. They were state changes that were staying sober wasn't more uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And I think that gray area is so important now where that's where like 90% of EverBloom members are. They're in that like, do I have to say I'm an alcoholic? I really want to grow. I know that I'm using it as a coping mechanism. Like they're there. They're just not there in terms of I want to never drink again. And so I think, yeah, I think it's important to have a place for people to talk about that and talk about what they're using alcohol for and not be told what they're using it for.
Yeah, and it gives them a little more of that awareness around it and just be like, "Oh, okay, I clearly was using this to cope with whatever situation," which, that's a common thing, like pay attention to why you're doing it, but we don't always do it. At least I don't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, and it's amazing. So they can come in, like we have a meeting tonight, and they can say, I had a drink Wednesday night, and no one's gonna be like, oh my God. But you can
Right.
say then, why did you have a drink?
Mhm.
Like, what were you thinking? How do you feel today? And it's like, I think it's a really special thing to be able to talk during that period that you're kind of exploring that relationship. I didn't have that. It was either like drinking or like Super Bowl Sunday, not drinking.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll watch stuff on TV and they're drinking or whatever. And I'm like, will I never get to experience that again? But it's romanticized on TV. Like I've learned that impetus passes pretty quickly to have a drink for me. And then I feel good in the morning, you know?
Yeah. And I think the more tools, like, and that's the other thing, right? They're still getting all the tools. So
Hmm.
if they're ever wanting to make a full kind of change, like they have those tools. Whereas
I
like
love that.
I was developing them like after the fact.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
such a good point because I don't think anything in our lives has to be, most of the time, doesn't have to be all or nothing. I have a philosophy of do it more often than you don't, or, just like as long as we're meditating more often than we don't, or whatever it is. Do
Yeah.
you
And I
find
think,
that?
yeah, I think we have to be like gentle with ourselves. Like I honestly, like
Yeah.
there was a long period that on my worst days, I didn't want to journal and I didn't. It was
Yeah.
too much. It was just like I
Yeah.
just know that it's in my head. Like I got this. Like I'm thinking about it. Don't worry. But I just didn't want to put it on paper, and I didn't force myself to even. And then you know what? The next day I would. And so yeah, I think that and I love AA. I do. I love the wisdom of AA. I love the community. I think it's such an amazing program, but I think that there needs to be some alternative for people that don't want that all or nothing. And I think that I didn't even realize how big that void was until I started EverBloom.
I would love that you just said that because I like AA too. I like the 12 steps. And
Love them.
yet I could see once I attended one of these meetings, I could see how different what the different need that it was filling. And it felt really good. And I don't know, just the array of women that were there too. I was like, this is really interesting because I went to one that was all women,
Yeah.
and I found it very interesting, and I loved that they were showing up in that space because maybe they did have a drink, but they're still showing up in that space. Has that
Yeah.
really moved you? Like, how's it felt to create this, and how
I
have
can't.
you grown?
I can't. I get so emotional thinking about it. I think, was it the meeting that you were at? Like towards the end, people were like, thank you so, or something. They were just like very appreciative of that they could be honest with what they wanted and what they were doing. And so I think that it's so moving to me that people are really able to make changes because of something we're doing together. And I think it really, I'm happy that proves the point that connecting with people is one of the most important things you can do. And yeah, I mean, even I go to the meeting, like I'm running the meeting, but I'm like, I'm the client, right? Like these are my meetings too. Like I need them just as much as they do. And they give me, I mean, I think most of the time they give me more than I could ever give them, and their wisdom and like, yeah. And I think the honesty is what's most moving is what I really get. Like I get really choked up about the honesty.
That's so cool. I mean, that means, it's coming from the heart, and that means it's resonating. That's good because if you didn't feel that, you'd be back at the orthodontist business or something, right?
I would.
Yeah. Well, so what can I ask you, like, this is sort of a weird question, but I'm just curious. Like, what's your take on alcohol? Like, what do you think of alcohol?
It's so tough, right? Like I think if you asked me like 2 years ago, I would say like it's a poison, it's a toxin. I can't believe it's legal, and all these other things are not legal. So that was probably my stance a couple of years ago. I think that there are people who do use it responsibly. And I just was never that person. I wasn't that person when I was 15, or even when I'll be 50, I will not be that person. And so I think it's hard to judge something that you're totally incapable of using in a normal way, right? It's sort of like a gun debate. Like it's like, it's hard for me because I'm so on one side of the spectrum of not being able to have one drink, that it's hard to have like a firm stance. What's your stance?
I know. As I asked you, I'm like, I'm not even sure what my
Yeah.
stance is. I'm really not because I know how it feels, and I like it, and I can understand why people like it. And, I have been able to use it in moderation, but the older I get, the more of a price I pay. I
Yeah.
understand physically what it does to us. There's that great episode from Andrew Huberman where he explains it. I don't know if you've listened to that. It's great.
Okay.
And, you know, I tend not to get too hardcore on anything. So at least I try not to, because usually I come around and regret it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. And I think that's why I asked you. And I like that,
Yeah.
you've sort of swung this way, and you swing back to the middle a little bit where you can approach it with some grace and compassion, right? And you know, my partner is sober. He is in recovery from addiction. And he's encountered people that have had maybe years of sobriety and then relapsed. But he was saying that you don't lose all of that.
Oh,
You don't, right? Like you just had a day or 2 days or however long, and you can go right back to it. And I think that so many times we get into these all or nothing kind of mindsets. And I
and I think
liked
it's,
that so much about you. Yeah.
yeah, I
Go ahead.
think like culturally too, like we're so used to seeing the only type of addict and the only type of recovery is AA, right? Like in movies and
Hmm.
everything, we don't see other types of recovery. And I think so, we're so ingrained to like count days. And when people in our groups, they're like, I failed, I'm back on day one. And I'm like, no, not back on, no, we're not doing this. Like, we're not doing the back on day one thing. Like, look, if your goal is to drink the least number of days possible, then you have achieved it. You drank one out of like the last
Yeah.
45 days. How is that a failure? How is that a failure? I never made it. Like, I never had one drink in 45 days.
Right, right. You had 45
Yeah.
days worth of drinks. Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
know
I went
what? That's a great
150.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I love that. I mean, like it really is. It is not a failure, and we want to quantify it in some way. And so I feel like what you are doing is really supporting that theory, supporting
I
that
don't know.
lifestyle, you
Yeah,
know?
I don't know if you and your partner have seen it too, but like part of the reason relapses can be so like vicious is because people are too ashamed to go back and get support. They think, well, I've already
Oh yeah.
broken the streak, so I might as well just go on a bender for a month and then I'll get sober again. But I think when you give people that
Oh, he has a
space
friend who died. He has a friend who died. Sorry,
in a
not to
bad
interrupt.
relapse. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no,
Mhm.
no, no. That, yeah, my brother had a very bad relapse that went on for it may still be going on, but yeah, for a while. And
Mm.
during that time, like lost custody, got a DUI, like,
Ah,
yeah.
yeah.
And he was an AA guy, and he didn't feel, he was definitely not going to go to those guys and be like, hey, I went on a bender. I think there was, I hate to say that AA is judgy. I think people feel judged,
Yeah, I think you're
even if the
right.
program isn't designed to judge you, but people feel it.
Yeah, because I think if he really did go to those people and say, "Hey," I think they're the ones that would be like, "We get it, and we're here for you. We're here to support you." Because we put that shame on ourselves so many times when we don't have to. Like the one day that someone drinks or whatever. Like in that meeting, like everybody was like, "Okay." In the
And
meeting
isn't
I
it,
attended with you.
yeah,
Mhm.
and isn't it better that they figure out why it
Yeah.
happened?
Yes, yes, it is.
I didn't figure out why until I was like sober for like 3 years. Like, I didn't get to the root of the problem for years. I didn't start my emotional sobriety for a long time because I was so focused on like the physical abstinence of it. And
Wow, yeah.
yeah, I think that they're getting to emotional sobriety. Like, they can literally be drinking and be emotionally sober, compared to what I was like. I think that I see so much change and growth in the women that it's like, wow, like you really get it. You really get it.
That's so cool. Let me ask you too, as we're talking about alcohol, the culture of drinking, because right when we hopped on the call before we started recording, you mentioned that you had been here in Austin, where I am, for South by Southwest. And so you got to see some up close drinking culture. And like, what did you feel in those situations? What did you observe? And,
Wow.
how does that make you feel?
So the coolest thing is that I was still running my meetings from Austin. So I
Nice.
would jump on the meeting and be like, "Oh my god, it's such a hard day because everyone's drinking." But the culture, it was interesting. I think that I have no problem going to a bar in New York or to anything where there's drinking. I'm comfortable in that environment. But this was like, the outings were centered around alcohol. So if you didn't drink, there was literally nothing else to do. It wasn't like alcohol is an accompaniment to a show or alcohol is an accompaniment to a meal. It was just like drinking in Austin. And the
Yeah.
weather was good. So all the bars, like, their doors were open and you could see people just drinking. And so yeah, I think the first couple of nights I just didn't, it's just crazy. It's been 6 years. I didn't feel like going out. I didn't want to. I just didn't want to go into that. And part of it, I think, is that, I'm recently single. And so I definitely was like, I don't want to like talk to guys in this type of environment. And I don't want to have to tell people I'm sober right now. Like, it just wasn't the right environment. And so, yeah, I think that can have an effect when you come from a heavy, heavy drinking culture where it's kind of like, oh, I don't drink. And people are like, why? What do you
Yeah.
mean? Why? Why don't you drink? And it's like, but I feel like if you're in the two coasts, like if you're in New York and you're in California and you say you don't drink, people are like, oh, okay, it's really cool. I got a friend that doesn't drink. Yeah. Like and like we have tons of alcohol-free bottle shops in New York, and there's a whole culture
Oh,
around that. Yeah,
I want
tons.
that. I want
Yeah,
that. Somebody open one in Austin, please. Wow.
there is. I mean, you guys have an alcohol-free bar,
Yes,
Sans
Sans
Bar.
Bar. I think that Sans Bar. Yeah, that's I might have gotten on your list through that or something because he supported an event that we put on a while back and made cocktails and stuff. So, yeah, and I mean like I am seeing it trending up, like all my ads right now on my Instagram are just like every
Yeah,
non-alcoholic beverage that's being created to almost mimic, alcohol in some ways or provide some sort of
yeah.
euphoria. But anyway, so then you have to go like, why am I seeking this again? I think,
Yes,
yeah,
I'm afraid of what do they call them? Like it's not like the adaptogens. And I'm afraid of
yeah,
microdosing psychedelics. I don't know why. I know
yeah.
these things are totally safe for me, but I'm just really creepy about it.
Then don't do it, right? Like you got to listen to your gut, maybe it's something that could lead you down a path and maybe you just want to wait and that's okay. Like again, we're just saying, okay, that's your path, right? That's okay.
Yeah,
I did
yeah,
microdose. I did microdose during this year. I had something go on that really was hard for me to physically process. And my friend's a microdosing expert. So she was like, I'm sending you microdoses. So I didn't even feel it, but it did help release some of my emotions. So I'm not counting that in my
no,
sobriety year.
no, I
Yeah.
wouldn't count
So
that.
I did do that. Yeah. But I get it because it can be a slippery slope sometimes, like as far as if you
Yeah,
are all the way sober.
I think you have to be in the right headspace too. And so the last year, I have not been in the right headspace to not be 100% me and feel what I'm feeling. I think that I was worried that if I got any like moment of a break from this like excruciating breakup pain that I would be like, oh, that's amazing. Can we do that every day? I need a break from this. So I think that's probably what it's more related to, where I didn't want a break from the pain.
Is this the breakup of your marriage that we're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
When was that? When was that?
A year ago.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was that recent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Been quite a
I
year.
was, yeah, it has been quite a year. Like, um, how is your self-love journey? How is that transformed in sobriety and with your breakup?
It is stronger now. I would say like my self-compassion is something I'm really working on, stronger now than it has ever been. And I think part of it is getting rid of somebody, well, they got rid of themselves, who was not supportive, right? Of all the things that I was doing, that didn't see those things as worthwhile. And so it turns out they are, right? Turns out that talking about recovery and talking about, exploring your relationship with alcohol is super important. It's super important to so many people. And so I think, yeah, I'm doing really well with that. I'm trying to be like gentle if I'm not feeling like I have this thing now where it's like if I'm not feeling well mentally, I treat myself like I have a cold. I'm going to get in the blanket and I'm going to watch Netflix for a couple of hours. Like I'm trying to release a lot of this, like, years of like hustle culture and be like, no, I'm going to take a break. I'm taking a break. Yeah.
Wow, I love that. What a good way to cope, just to stop and give yourself a break. I'm impressed because you've started this new business and you're able to do that. Is it like sometimes does your mind still spin when you do that? Because like I've noticed that sometimes if I want to take a break, I'll just still like beat myself up a little bit. Like you should be doing
Oh,
blah
yeah.
blah blah.
Yeah, because there's endless amount, like same thing with you, right? Like there's an endless amount of like ideas I could have or any like things I could communicate to people by email. Like, should I tell them this? Should I tell them this?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that also this is kind of off topic, but something interesting I started to notice after my ex-husband left was that I had been making myself very small for years. And I had been not making like noise around the house. I had been, when I would get in bed, I would kind of curl up in a ball. And so I'm going through this thing now where it just sort of happened over time where I'm very loud in the house. Like I dance around the house. I sing really loud in the house. I spread out all the way on the couch. And so these things are like, I think it's so exciting for me that I'm like, I know this is worth it. I know this is good for me. But yeah, I it's not like I'm turning into a different person, but I think those things were in there. And I was sort of like, I don't know if you've ever had a relationship like that where you sort of make yourself as small as possible, not to disrupt the equilibrium.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a physical manifestation of what's going on there, right? Like you were pulling yourself way back to keep peace and I mean, so many times our bodies are sensing things that are going on anyway, right? Like you were feeling that whether you were cognizant of it or not,
Yeah,
which is a
yeah,
trip.
it is. And just like little things that had changed probably over the years that I just was, I don't know, censoring myself in some way. And so, yeah, it's been really, that's been a big part of like the self love journey is like, wait, I like doing this. So I'm going to do it.
Sounds completely liberating, and that's beautiful. So,
Right.
yeah. I mean, that's what a sobriety journey can be, so liberating. And that's what I've just been willing to explore. I feel like that's what it comes down to for me. Just this, I mean, people use sober curious. And
Mhm.
so do you like that term?
I like every term. I think that anytime someone's trying to drink less, that's great. Call it whatever you want. Like
Yeah.
I'm not even super opposed to Cali sober. That's
Yeah.
better than not being Cali sober.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think any improvement is something that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, because I think what you're saying there too is just about cutting out drinking is going to make your life better, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you think you're drinking too much that you want to be Cali sober, then cutting out drinking is a great idea, right?
Hmm.
And I think that, yeah, we haven't been exploring that sort of like, I think harm reduction gets a really bad name sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, because I guess what I'm getting at too is just like the sheer uh, experimentation of, okay, what if I cut this out? Would my life improve? How could I see it improve? And that's like if you're not drinking every single day for a decade or whatever it is,
Yeah.
like just going, well, could it? What if I did? Like
Yeah.
that was part of my mindset around it, I think.
Yeah. And
Are
we
you
know now
noticing a lot
that,
of that?
yeah,
Yeah,
that
go ahead. Sorry.
we know that if people go 3 days without drinking, we don't have to tell them. They feel better. They know it, right? Like they
Yeah.
are going to experience that the positive effects of not drinking. And so that's why I kind of like the idea of sober periods because it's more about choice. So it's like, well, if you don't feel better, if you feel worse, I don't know, maybe there's a problem. We need to see a doctor. But for the most part, when
Yeah.
people do like dry January or things like anything like that, like they understand the effects of like taking that out of, their daily routine.
Yeah, because I had done it to where I wasn't drinking too often, so when I did, I started to notice, oh my gosh, if I drink on Saturday, on Wednesday and Thursday, I'm having low points and those went away. And so I was like, oh gosh, this was a much longer, you know, hangover or effect than I anticipated. Yeah. Which you were drinking every single day. So you couldn't probably get the
Yeah,
gauge of how you felt, you know?
that's exactly it. Yeah, and I think if I had thought there was an option, because I don't think I really understood there was an option between being sober and there was any middle ground, or being labeling myself as an alcoholic or any other, middle ground. I mean, I am a gold star alcoholic. I'm fine with it. It's part of my identity. But I wonder if I had known earlier that if I had known 15 years ago that moderation was something that, people tried, or if they were like mocktails or those, like, back then, who knows, maybe I would have, done some harm reduction before getting sober.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about your business too, because EverBloom is providing support through emails to people, and you can sign up for a meeting for free for the first time. That's correct, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's great. I think that, I understand, like, the how nerve-wracking it can be to just go into a group of people and, like, start sharing your truth. And so I think letting people, like, say, like, "Hey, come to a meeting. If you don't wanna talk, don't. If you want to, do." And so at least they get an idea of, what it feels like. And so, yeah, people generally just love it. Like, they just are, yeah, they just feel really seen and really heard. And so, yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, when I did it, I was just like, I just wanted to observe and, see what I get out of it. But I ended up talking some,
You got in there.
I did. I think there's so much value to that, to when we actually speak up. And I get a little, it's so funny. I talk for a living, but I get nervous in those situations. Like, am I going to make sense? And it doesn't matter, you just have to jump in and, participate and share a little bit of yourself, and you're going to get more out of it. I believe if somebody's thinking about a meeting, I would say, go in with an observer attitude, but let yourself share if you need to. I mean, it's a
For
beautiful thing.
sure. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. I totally agree with that. I think it's just, and I think that a lot of people are like me, where especially when they stop drinking as much, they're a lot more introverted than they realize. And so a
Yeah.
small group is sort of nice for that, where it's like, I don't need to say this in front of 200 people, but in front of, like, 12, 15 people that are also talking about the same thing, it's a lot easier. And I think, yeah, I don't know if there's more introverts than extroverts, but there's introverts out there that need this.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, I don't even know. We all have our moments, right? At least I feel like sometimes I'm more introverted, sometimes I'm extroverted. I don't know. So I just roll with it and just try to do my best to open up in the moment if I can. And even when it's hard, and sometimes when it's hard, those are the times to pay attention to and go ahead and do it. And like sometimes I can feel it welling up in my throat, like I need to speak. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What is that? Is it a chakra?
It
Like right
is. It
here?
sure is. It's your
Yeah,
throat
yeah.
chakra. It's blue. Big time. Oh, yeah. How has how have you been feeling about like the vision moving forward with Everbloom?
Yeah, so I think the whole point for me was to not have a really rigid idea of what I wanted it to look like, and to really, really listen to the feedback, listen to these people. What is it they need? And so, to be honest, in the last few months, I have pivoted a lot more to this sort of like sober, curious area with the members. Like, I think that, and I think they're a lot more comfortable. So, yeah, I think that I see it, where people are just exploring their relationship with alcohol. At some point, they will have explored it and they can move on to another group, like, or another one of our groups, where they can explore something else that's going on. So, for example, for me, like a life transitions, we have a group where you can talk about rebuilding your life and talk about self esteem. And so, yeah, I think just being open also gives us so many different perspectives that we don't see necessarily at AA. And so I think it's like, yeah, so I'm just super open. And so I've even like tossed around the idea of like, why not try like an old school topic meeting? Like,
I
why
love
don't we
it.
do a group for that? Like, why don't we just try
Yeah.
it out and see? So yeah, I'm super open. I just want to try a bunch of different things. What we have going now is working. And so I think that it's a good place to start like testing out a couple of different ideas. But I love like, I mean, I think there are people that have been sober for a long time that would kind of love a old school meeting.
I do too. I do too. When you look at your life, are you surprised how it's turned out? Are you
I
so,
can't
or do
believe
you
it.
just sort of go like, what?
Yeah, I can't believe it. I think my heart needs to catch up to my head with that. But when I like say it out loud, I'm like, I have like such a beautiful life. Like I know, there's some sadness still about the breakup of the relationship, but no, I don't think I ever saw this for myself. I don't think I ever saw, especially from the culture I come from, like talking about my mental health and my addiction every day. Like, no, it was not in the cards. But yeah, it's amazing. And I feel like I've connected with so many people, like even you, like people that I would have never met.
Yeah, and that kind of um that learning in your life, like you stay open and you don't know how things are going to turn out. That's I noticed that that's like feeding your attitude about your business. You're like, I'll just stay open because we don't really know. We don't know how things are going to evolve. Mm-mm. It's one of the
No, and
beauties of
it's
life.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you stay curious, I think too, like that's when we're gonna see, especially with Everbloom, like I think that's when I'm gonna start seeing progress. And I think if I hadn't been curious about this sort of gray area, I think that we would, then what's the point? There's meetings for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's just so much value in exploring all the spaces that are possible. And I hope I get to attend another meeting sometime soon.
Yeah,
Like,
I would love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I just really enjoyed it. And I mean, like, you can turn off your camera if you want to, if you don't feel like you look good or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just they're on Zoom. If anybody's wondering, it's really, really easy. It
Yeah,
was well set up. So I just applaud what you're doing and that you've devoted your life to, or at least this chapter of your life, to helping people in this situation, because I do believe completely that my life is better since I took a break from alcohol, since I cut it
yeah,
out. hmm
yeah.
And I'm
And look,
excited
there's
to
a
see what
lot.
develops. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that can say that, right? Like even just taking a break. So if there's anyone listening, you just want to take a break, do it. Just try it out.
Just try it out, and there's support to be had around that.
Yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping up, is there anything that we missed that you really wanted to talk about today, or anything that comes up for you in this moment that you want to share, or um, share with the listeners or talk about?
Um, I think the one thing I was just talking to somebody before we got on this call about mental health and addiction and how I've been so much more open about the addiction than any mental health issues I had. And I think in my mind, it was like, well, obviously that's why I was drinking. Like, why? Obviously, I was self medicating, but it's not obvious. And I think that that's a whole other thing that we should be exploring is talking about like what are you self-medicating? What is there an actual problem there? And so yeah, I mean I had really severe anxiety and depression that needed medication. That's another thing I would like those medications don't work when you are drinking. They only work when you stop. You're not doing yourself
Wow.
any favors. And so yeah, I think that's sort of on my mind is like being more open about what we're struggling with the alcohol. So it's like, what is the issue? What is that underlying issue?
So if people are taking antidepressants, let's
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
and they're drinking too, it's
yeah.
just not going to
It's a
work.
depressant. I'm a dentist. I know, I'm kidding. But yeah, it's a depressant. So you're taking an antidepressant and
Right.
then you're taking a depressant. And then if you're
There's gonna
taking stuff for anxiety, you are maybe alleviating your anxiety for a few hours. And then you're rebounding when, your dopamine level goes way back down after you stop drinking to having more anxiety.
Yeah. I mean, that totally makes sense. Yeah. I mean, that's really something to think about, because so many people are taking things to help them with their depression and then just counteracting it
And
in a
even if you're
negative way.
not taking something, but you have some sort of low level depression, right? And you're just, not diagnosed, not taking any medication, you're still making it worse. But
100%. And I've noticed that
yeah,
myself, like how much better I feel. And I mean, I've not um, struggled with depression where I was medicating, but I have been depressed. And so this makes it so much better. Like taking that out of the equation just makes me more even. And when I have the low moments, like we were talking about, I'm bouncing back quicker. I'm able to deal with it better. So,
yeah,
wow.
I
I
know.
mean,
Yeah, I am so grateful that I was able to stay sober through that sort of like 1 year of upheaval because I just would have been so much worse if I was drinking.
mhm. Yeah, it's such a like temporary quick fix, like a little band-aid or something, because you just think I'll just feel better. Like it's that right now mentality. I feel like that I can get carried away in.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much. This has been so interesting to hear your story and how you built this business. And I find it inspiring in a way of if anybody listening is not only considering sobriety, but considering starting a business of something that they have personal experience in and how your life can take a turn, right? I mean, that's such a cool part of your story, how
Yeah.
you have turned this into something to help others.
Yeah, it makes it feel like what I went through was worth it.
It really does, right? I mean, how can we turn our trauma into something beautiful that can help others? And that's the overarching, message here, I feel like. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for being open to me too and just like reading my email, I mean like I could have been anybody and not deleting it. And for taking the time to be here today. Can you share how everyone can find Everbloom and sign up for a meeting? I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yes, you can go to joineverbloom.com. And then on any social, we're either Join Everbloom or Everbloom. And I had a viral TikTok last weekend. It was very shocking.
Congratulations.
I had to Google what that meant. And it means you have more than 500,000 views or 250,000 views. So yeah, that was very exciting. So yeah, just check us out and try out a meeting. There's no pressure, no commitment. If you just are thinking about it and you want to see what it's like, then you can just go to Join Everbloom and click sign up for a free meeting.
Yeah, I mean, it was super easy. And I got a reminder like right before it. I mean, it was like no problem. So I highly encourage anyone who's listening to this and thinking about it, go for it. Just try one. Just try one. It's easy. And you know what? You'll end up like maybe a little bit further down your path. And that's cool. That's where the growth happens. So, anything else you want to add before we go, Sonia?
No, thank you so much for having me. And just thank you for being so open with me. And yeah, listening. Thank
Uh,
you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm just so honored that you took the time today and that I have been able to connect with you and, raise your voice as much as I can and do my part there because what you're putting out in the world is so important and so good and so helpful to so many people. So thank you for that you're doing. And of course, everyone follow them and go to joineverbloom.com. You can sign up for a meeting like I did. And who knows, you might just see me there. You never know. And everyone here, thank you so much for being here today. I am so, so grateful. Remember that you can sign up for the newsletter and stay up to date on all the episodes and subscribe. It's at amyedwards.com or go to amyedwards.com info for basically everything. You can sign up for the newsletter there. You can get my courses there, which are out now. My free course, The Ageless Mindset, Look Younger, Feel Happier in Less Than an Hour, and the Youthfulness Hack, How to Reverse Aging Fast and Create a New Radiant You. And yep, sure do talk about drinking in there. I have a whole little section on it. And so it's optional, but you know what? If you want to create that new radiant you, I do believe that at least having an awareness around it is such an important part of being your most radiant version. And just like everything we heard from Sonia today. So anyway, thank you again to our guest today. Go to joineverblume.com and everything's in the show notes, including a link so you can sign up for, which I've had in the past few episode notes too, where you can just sign right up for any meeting. So anyway, thank you so much for being here, because when you show up for this, you're showing up for yourself and you're showing up for your best version, that next best version, which you've already created. Boom, here it is right now in this moment. I love you so much. Thanks again, Sonia. And thank you to you. Till next time.
This has been the Amy Edwards Show from Overcome Studios. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And thank you so much for being here. Sign up for our newsletter at amyedwards.com.